One. Welcome everyone back to the Ship Intelligence Report. This is your humble and meek correspondent and recovering CI officer Kevin Ship, coming to you from our off-the-grid studio somewhere deep in the southeastern United States. Welcoming today a special guest, my friend and associate Dennis Hunt. I consider a civilian expert on being a prepper, preparation, EMF and other things. Dennis, welcome to the program.
Hey, how you doing, Kevin?
Doing good, man. We're still breathing.
Okay.
And as I posted on the program yesterday, we underwent for about 2 weeks a multi-pronged electronic attack here at our off-the-grid farm. The entire solar power system went down. The operating system crashed. The computer crashed. Our cameras, CCTVs were turning themselves on, and all kinds of crazy stuff. So I must be over the target. Anyway. Everybody, I want to introduce Dennis, and today we're going to talk about the economic crisis that we're right in the middle of, and sadly, everybody, it's going to get worse. It's very, very serious. I'm going to show you information. What we do here is factual, based on research and documentation, and we cite sources. And I'll show you some of the sources, Forbes and Brookings Institute and others, where I do my research. So this stuff is documented. I'll talk about the economic crisis so you all know what is happening and what is coming. And that's very important. And then I'll turn it over to my friend Dennis, and Dennis will show you a great presentation on how to prepare for what's coming. So Dennis, my friend, if you're ready, we'll get going.
Okay, let's roll.
All righty. Rock and roll, as they say. Okay. Now, and Dennis, feel free to jump in anytime. One of the important things, especially in terms of preparation, is knowing what the warning signs are for an economic crisis. You want to watch these things carefully, and they are indicators of what is coming. This all comes from sources like Citibank, Forbes, Brookings Institute, and others. So this is coming from the experts in these financial institutions, stock market advisory groups, and others. So on this program, we don't just pick things out of the air and claim they're real. As Dennis and I were talking about before the program, what we discuss here is factually, it's facts-based, and it's based on evidence. And as you all know, that's important to me personally with everything I put out. All right, economic warning signs, reduced bank capital. Okay, what does that mean? Central banks around the world are unprepared to deal with a new banking crisis since 2008. The financial system would still be in great peril if one or more of these big banks fail, despite the reforms in 2008. So the central banks, everybody, are still at just as much risk as they were in 2008. They were bailed out. If they weren't bailed out in 2008, we would have faced a horrible economic collapse. So, and some of them were bailed out that really didn't deserve it. But frankly, if they hadn't been bailed out, we would have been in serious trouble. That's still the case, especially with the student loan bubble, which I'll talk about later on. $1.2 trillion worth of loans that these students can't pay back. So keep an eye on the central banks. And I do this regularly, and you'll see stuff coming out of JP Morgan and others, Citibank, sounding the alarm about what they're seeing. Soaring private debt, especially credit card debt. That's happening right now. People are using their credit cards for food, subprime auto loans, loans that finance corporate leveraged buyouts, corporate debt, and others. And a quote from, I believe it was Citibank, any type of secured lending backed by an asset that is overvalued, and what this is going to cause to happen is interest rates to increase for all of us. That means on our credit cards, that means on our car loans, that means on our mortgages, which I know people that if their mortgage goes up just a couple $100 a month, they're in danger of foreclosure. Ballooning federal deficit. I will talk about this, everybody, in a moment. I'll show you some graphs. Quantitative easing. Remember that? The Federal Reserve is pumping funny money into our economy to try to save it, throwing gasoline on a fire, a huge national debt already. Now, if there's another economic crisis coming with the Federal Reserve printing trillions of fake monopoly money, it's going to be far worse than if they hadn't done quantitative easings. Now, I'm not I know why the Federal Reserve is doing this. We will do a program on the Federal Reserve, ladies and gentlemen, an unconstitutional organization that is neither federal nor has any reserves, but that's for another program. Now, I talked about student debt, staggering $1.3 trillion student debt bubble according to Barron's. This is what Barron's says. There are parallels to 2008. This is a big financial banking analyst institution, everybody. Barron's says this, there are parallels to 2008. That's not good. There are massive amounts of unaffordable loans being made to people who can't pay them, and the easy availability of those loans is leading to asset inflation. And Barron's is saying this is a bubble similar to the housing bubble in 2008. That should scare everybody. So keep an eye. These are warning signs. There are others we'll talk about, but these are the big four. Keep an eye on those as we go on. The national debt. The federal debt is mushrooming out of control. That is going to come back and bite us, and it's going to bite us badly. I'll talk more about that. The federal debt has got to be repaid. The U.S. national debt, we can't just write it off and declare bankruptcy. It's got to be paid back to the countries that we have borrowed from, like China, stupidly so. Like China, that debt has got to be paid back. If the U.S. defaulted on that debt, it would cause a global financial collapse. That's how important this is. The government will extract large amounts of dollars from the economy to service the debt. What's going to happen, and is starting to happen with the federal deficit and the federal debt, is the government is taking money from other programs to pay just the interest on the federal debt. Keep that in the back of your mind. More on that later. When the government uses our tax money to finance the interest on the national debt, they're going to have to take that money from somewhere. And they're going to take it from other government programs that were designed to help we, the people, to service the national debt. And we're going to have programs decrease, and it's serious. People need to know that. They need to understand that, and they need to prepare for that. Anything you want to add, Dennis, as I go on?
No, I was just amazed at some of the facts that you're laying out here. And of course, we've heard bits and pieces of this, over a number of years, but the magnitude of what it has become now is absolutely scary. And the easing by the Federal Reserve, where they're constantly inflating the currency to the point where it's almost uninflatable anymore. They're running out of resources. Before, if we'd had a crash of some kind, the crash would have been manageable. People could have survived it, but the way they've got this artificially inflated now, it's going to be devastating when it comes down.
Right. Well said. I mean, this is terrifying, and sadly, the more that I present here, the more terrifying this is going to be. And we're doing this for our Patreon people because you are special. You all are special. I don't publish a lot of what I publish on this channel for obvious reasons, but this will be up on the Patreon channel for you to replay and go back and read anytime you want, or to show your family. And that's the purpose of this. So this information, there's a lot of stuff here, but you can come back and reference this. Thanks, Dennis. Okay, it's going to lead to slower economic growth, of course. The private sector is struggling to fund the public sector and spending. The private sector is going to start losing money from the government, from government grants and other things that they've been dependent on, universities, for example, for so long. Now, the government is going to struggle, if not reduce or end, some essential services. I'll show you what some of those are here in a moment. The government, you can count on this, everybody. The government is going to be forced to raise taxes on all of us and cut spending for programs that benefit we as American civilians. The taxes will go up. Now, God forbid, if Joe Biden is elected president, fasten your seatbelts, everybody. It's going to get ugly. And more about that later. Congress is responsible for this ultimately. The longer Congress waits to address the national debt, the more extreme actions will be needed to restrain it from destroying our economy. This comes from Forbes. Forbes is a magazine I trust and have for years. Congress has refused to address the national debt. They refused it again this year. They keep raising the debt ceiling because it's political suicide, with some exceptions, like Senator Rand Paul, who doesn't care about the slings and arrows that come in. He stands against the national debt all the time, he and his dad. They're constitutionalists and they don't bend. That's why I respect them both. The rest of Congress has been ignoring this, ignoring the national debt and letting us, we are a freight train that is about a mile from the cliff, thanks to our Congress, which of course has been also stealing money from Social Security, money that we paid for, many of us, for over 20 years. But that's another program. But here is the national debt. Now, ladies and gentlemen, sponsors, all of you out there, this is pre-COVID-19, the national debt. If you stacked dollar bills, this is the pre-COVID-19 debt. I'll show you here in a moment. If you stacked dollar bills, it would stretch from the earth to the moon 5 times. That's how big national debt was before COVID-19. You can stretch dollar bills stacked up thinly from the moon to the earth, back and forth 5 times. And that's the amount of money that the national debt was before COVID-19 hit. And this comes from the Media Research Center, which I highly recommend. They're always on the heels of the mainstream media and exposing that and things like this. Go to the Media Research Center. I'd recommend them highly, Brent Bozell and company. But this is what the national debt looked like. And here it is again, interest payments. Now again, pre-COVID-19. Wait till I get to COVID-19 if you think this is scary. These are interest payments, not payments on the debt. Payments on the interest are on the rise. They were $400 billion a year, not to pay off the debt, just to pay the interest. This is from the Pew Research Center. That should scare everyone. Sadly, it doesn't get any better. This is pre-COVID-19. Over $593 billion a year leading up to COVID was being spent just on the interest only of the national debt. Now we're getting close to the point where the United States will not be able to afford even the interest on our national debt, and then things start to go into default. Again, Barron's, Forbes, Citibank, others, they're all warning about this. Congress is not listening because they're elected based on scratching people's itches. Anyway, all right, what does $1 trillion look like? Well, it looks like this. Everybody, this is $1 trillion in $100 bills. And this is what 1 trillion looks like, just so you know.
Can I interrupt here for a second?
Sure. Go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, just seeing that picture reminds me of when I worked for the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, and we used to see these vast amounts of money stacked in rooms from floor to ceiling. And I remember sitting in a meeting with my boss one time, and he said, you know, he wrote down a little note to me and slipped it to me, and they had just talked about $1 billion sitting out in the hallway that they were going to move from one point to another, you know?
Yeah.
This little footnote.
I mean, yeah, it's mind-boggling. It really is. Okay, so if that's $1 trillion in $100 bills, the national debt now has exploded after COVID to $27 trillion. That's the national debt, right?
Wow.
Now, I remember listening when the national debt was 19 trillion, experts saying if it gets over 23, 25 trillion, we're in jeopardy of default. Well, here it is, $27 trillion. So wow. You take this picture and you can multiply this 27 times at the national debt.
Wow.
It is virtually impossible to pay off. What does that mean? That means there will be an economic collapse. Okay. Now, we don't know when that'll happen. We don't know if it's going to be 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Nobody knows. The experts don't know. You know it's coming. They just don't know when. I want you all to see what is coming down the road for the United States so you can prepare, which Dennis will talk about later. Federal spending, look at the bar in red, $2.5 trillion is the interest, this pre-COVID-19 interest on the debt. So what they're having to do to pay that 2.5 trillion, and we just showed you how much a trillion is, they're having to take it from veterans benefits. If you look at the blue bar to the right, they're basically really screwing over veterans, taking money from there. They're taking 1 trillion from education, from the education of our kids, especially, and in universities. They're going to take 0.9 trillion from transportation. Then they're going to take some from the administration of justice. That's the criminal justice system, everybody. Then they're going to take another, 4/10 of a trillion from the natural resources and the environment. I'm not an environmentalist wacko, but my undergraduate degree is in biology, and I love the environment. And I could be considered a conservative environmentalist in that I believe the environment and natural resources are critically important. Well, they're going to start, they're doing it now. They're taking money from that and just trying to service this, the interest on the national debt that is out of control. All right, Federal Reserve, which is neither federal and has no reserves, again, has been doing what they call quantitative easing. In other words, monopoly money, digital money that they're creating out of thin air. You can see here, there's QE1, 2008, QE2, and then they did it again in QE3, because if they hadn't have done that, we were looking at a collapse. Well, they didn't stop there. This graph is actually from the Federal Reserve itself. What I did on their graph was I added COVID-19. They just put out quantitative easing 4, and a lot of people missed it, where they just created $85 billion more of monopoly money, funny money that doesn't exist. It has no currency. It has especially no gold or any asset to back it up. It is digits and it is air. That's what is propping up our economy right now. Nothing. Monopoly money.
Kevin, just
go ahead.
to interrupt you again quickly, but when you said gold, I was reminded of the fact that, if you're some of the people have an interest in it, go back and look at the price of gold in 1780 and then track that gold all the way up to present day. And you'll see that for 100 years or more, it was pretty flat. I mean, you could pretty well predict gold was going to be around $25 to $35 an ounce, maybe an average about $28 an ounce. And that's because it was the money was attached to something that was real. It wasn't air money, So a guy could take a gold, and when you look at the price of gold, is the price of gold doesn't actually change. It's the dollar changing around the gold, because an ounce of gold will still buy the same goods and services as it would in 1780. Mm-hmm. So the gold has remained stationary.
Mm-hmm. That's an excellent point. That's why so many people are saying, listen, if you want financial security, then buy gold. Now, not all of us can do that. Those of us that can do as much as we can. But if you are in a position to purchase gold coins in small denominations, it's a great thing to do, because Dennis said so well, gold never loses its value. It's always the same. And gold and silver. And I'd recommend too, if people are, and Dennis will talk more about this later, but invest in silver too, real silver, not the kind with the copper in the middle of it, but real silver, because silver is going to be just second to gold. It'll be very, very, very important if the dollar collapses and crashes. And I'll talk more about that as we go.
And also, silver has more room to move because of the low price. I mean, we had silver at $50 an ounce not too long ago, maybe 10, 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. And way back in the late 70s, early 80s, it went up again it went from about $4 an ounce up to about $50 an ounce. Yeah. So it has a lot of move. It moves well when it does move, Yeah,
it does. And what's in all the circuitry in computers and airplanes and other things? What's in the circuitry? Silver. So it's an ore that we can't do without. And so its value is going to continue to increase. And not everybody can buy gold, but the more people can buy silver and kind of stash that away. And and I'll go back here to the presentation. I am also, I like to advise people, don't think that stocking up a big pile of silver and gold is necessarily going to save you only from what's coming. You can have all the silver gold in the world, but we've seen with a microorganism, a pandemic, just wipe our entire economy out, regardless of how many silver and gold. Now, and when Germany fell, the wealthy Germans, what they did was they took their gold and they went out to the country, to the farmers, and they paid pure gold for broccoli and lettuce and other things that they needed to eat. So just keep that in the back of your mind, that gold is good, silver is good to have, but it's not the end all to a serious financial crisis.
You can't eat gold. You can't eat gold. You can't eat gold,
man. Yeah, there's no vitamins in gold.
Right.
And that's something that really important to remember. All right, let's keep going here. As unpleasant as this is, we have to know this. The mainstream media is not talking about this, obviously. That's why we are. Okay, U.S. total public debt versus our gross domestic product, or GDP. Look at our debt up there, which I've already talked about, $27.0 trillion. Our GDP is only 19.5 trillion. So the national debt has greatly superseded by almost $8 trillion. It is bigger than our gross domestic product. What does that mean? We can't pay it off based on what we're making, our country is making now. And frankly, everybody, it's never going to be paid off. I mean, I hate to say that, but you just need to know that that's coming. Who is the top foreign holder of U.S. Treasury securities and our national debt? China, who we owe $1.1 trillion. As Lunchbox Joe is toasting champagne with the head of the most evil communist government in the world, perhaps in history. And as how stupid can we be financially and still breathe? We've let ourselves get in $1.1 trillion. China has bought up our U.S. Treasury securities, owns part of our government, everybody. Now, based on what I've read, if China was to raise the interest on that part of the debt, just 2 or 3%, they could send us into a financial downward spiral. China is not going to do that presently, because to do that, they would also be hurting themselves, because they have so much trade and things with the United States. If they want to, if things got bad, they could hurt us badly there. And tensions with China are at an all-time high. All right. Now, yeah, you got something, Dennis?
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Now, the COVID-19 economy, everybody, this is what we all need to really think about from the Brookings Institute. Did some research on this. The number of labor force participants filing for employment quadrupled from January to April of this year. As you know, and I'll talk about this in a moment, it's gone up even higher since April of 2020. These are people who've lost their jobs. Small business revenue, and we're just talking about the money coming in from small businesses, is down 20% since January. That has also increased, probably up to about 30% now. And small businesses, I think the small business closings, they're up to, I think it's up to about 60% of small businesses in the United States have had to close their doors with the COVID economy. And many of those businesses will never be able to reopen again. And that's getting worse. And if Joe Biden gets elected and does a national lockdown, I'll talk about what's behind that here in a moment. If Biden does a national lockdown, we're talking a financial catastrophe. And he said that's exactly what he's going to do. I'll show you.
Kevin, I don't know what you have number-wise for the number of people that work for small businesses, but I've heard numbers somewhere between 60 and 80% of the people in America work for small businesses. And that's an astonishing figure. And you know, when you think of 20%, and that's probably conservative,
It is conservative.
It's going to be unreal to lose that many jobs.
Yeah, 20% is conservative. It's probably closer to 30% or more. And that's right. And as small business is the engine of the U.S. economy, not big business, small business. As we start losing small businesses, once again, we are in serious trouble.
And you know, another quick point is with a small business, you have a good chance of having more freedom than having a large business, because they're going to kind of do what they really want, you know, most of the time, unless they get really hit by severe government restrictions or local restrictions, you know.
That's a great point. If you work for a large business, and when I came out of the CI, I worked for a Beltway bandit that had government CI and other DoD contracts, huge corporation. When you're working for a big corporation like that, they tell you what to do or you lose your job. And
exactly,
trying to get money from especially government contracts, which is the crown jewel. But that government can tell you what to do. And what I think is coming, and this is worth a show too, small businesses will start demanding that their employees receive the COVID-19 vaccine or they'll be out of a job. And there are other things, biometric data that businesses are even now requiring their employees to have to work there. And it's going to get ugly with large businesses. But you're right, Dennis, small business is the freedom engine of this country. And that's what the lockdowns are killing, is small business. You kill small business, you kill freedom, you kill people's ability to be independent in this country, and you make people dependent on government. Yeah, good point. Chapter 11 bankruptcies have increased amongst not just civilians, but also amongst corporations as well, the smaller corporations, and more on that later. Layoffs, shutdowns continue to increase. Unemployment, small business closures continue to increase. I hate to say it, this election, and they're right, is the most important election in US history for many reasons. One of which we will find out, let's see, the Electoral College, barring any Supreme Court intervention, the Electoral College meets on December the 14th, and then the electors decide who the president will be on January the 6th. And that's why the Trump legal team is pressing on so heavily and fast. So January 6th is the big date. There's some talk that they could put the electoral votes off, but that's not going to happen. We'll know on January 6th who the president's going to be. If it's Joe Biden, national shutdowns, it's going to destroy small business, and it's going to destroy the adjoining freedom in our country. Sorry, everybody. Now, I'm not a Democrat, nor am I a Republican. I'm an independent, but I'm putting out to you the facts as they stand. It's potentially very serious. All right, I don't show a lot of graphs, but here's one that comes from Brookings Institution, just so you know, it comes from a reputable source. And this is small business revenue post-COVID-19. Retail, transportation, education, and health services are crashing. The leisure and hospitality industry, hotels and restaurants, the lower green bar there, they are taking it really, really hard. And remember, there are people connected with these things. There are lives connected to these things. There are families and their health insurance, their retirements connected to these things. These people are losing their businesses and they're losing their jobs. It is very serious. All right. 18 million Americans are out of work right now. That's never happened before in the history of the United States. That is worse than the Great Depression, everybody. More lockdowns, that will increase. Low-income families with children are most likely to experience income shock. Low-income families with kids are getting hit, and they're getting hit hard. I'll show you some of the food lines that are happening that the mainstream media is not showing us here in a moment. 26 states, more than 1 in 5 households are behind in their rent, and this is increasing month by month. More on that later. 2018 to 2020, the rate of food insecurity doubled for households with kids. Families are hurting. It's probably the last graph I'll show, maybe one more. Anyway, people not in the labor force who want a job, this is as of August of 2020, people that are available to work and are looking for work. You can see in August how these bars are laid out, but this is the employment from January to August. This has gotten worse, and going into the end of this year and in January, depending on the results of the presidential election, this could get really bad. It's bad now, it's terrible now. It can get worse. The experts are saying that the U.S. is facing, and this is a quote, a tidal wave of evictions at the end of the year involving millions of renters and homeowners who can't make their payments. 5.8 million adults say they're somewhat very likely to face eviction or foreclosure over the course of the next 2 months. 5.8 million people. That just scared the daylights out of everyone.
Wow.
A third of the 17.9 million Americans who were behind on the rent or mortgage payments, or were behind on the rent or mortgage payments last month. 17.9 million people could not pay their rent or mortgage last month.
Wow.
More lockdowns, it gets worse. 18 million Americans in our country are unemployed. 18 million. 2 million homeowners are in forbearance, meaning that they're not paying. 2.7 million of us are not even paying our rent or mortgage because they can't. And eventually, not only are they going down, but the people that are renting the houses and mortgages, they're going down also because these people can't make their payments. Foreclosures are happening. This makes the housing bubble look like a Sunday picnic. More on the COVID-19 economy. The UN World Food Program is warning Because of the global COVID-19 pandemic, and this is their quote, there could be famines of biblical proportions because of what COVID-19 has done to the world economy.
Wow.
Let me segue here a moment. We're in the midst of the Trump administration and Rudy Giuliani, and our best wishes to Rudy Giuliani. He's just been diagnosed with COVID, and we understand he's in the hospital. And they're probably giving him the same things they gave to Trump. So, our best wishes for him to recover. But anyway, biblical proportions. This is a global famine, everyone. Now, there are signs all over the world that indicate that globally the world's heading for some bad stuff.
Kevin, just a quick interruption here is just, you're probably going to cover this, but I mean, it's amazing how important America is to the rest of the world.
Right.
You hear all this negative propaganda about America and everything else, but I mean, if America goes down, the rest of the world goes down.
Right.
And so does the food supply.
That's right.
Because we're feeding an awful lot of people.
That's right. We go down, and basically the global economy goes down.
Exactly.
And they know that. What is bizarre here, Rudy Giuliani and the Trump legal team is pursuing and exposing a lot of fraud. I think that'll be another one of Trump's legacies, is the exposure of fraud, some of which has been there for decades that the Democratic Party has been doing, and some that is new. But they've been exposing frauds. But the bizarre part that everybody is, well, they're missing it just because they're focusing on fraud, which is good. The bizarre part is a microorganism released from a laboratory in Wuhan, China, came over to the United States and destroyed Trump's record economy and ruined the U.S. economy. Also, even the president of the United States and his family got this virus from China, and it allowed the Democratic Party to force through mail-in ballots, which allowed for a huge amount of fraud caused from China from this little virus, which is absolutely bizarre. That's kind of the big picture. All right, 30% of households experience food insecurity. 30% of us, 59 of these people have children who are living at home. Food banks cannot keep up with the huge demand and the surge in people. These are normal people. Ladies and gentlemen, these are not homeless people pushing grocery carts around. These are our friends and neighbors this is happening to. These are people who have never experienced anything like this in their entire life because they no longer have any income and they can't buy food for their kids for the first time. Here's a graph. This is just food insecurity, meaning they can't feed their family. Among households with children, you can see going all the way up in this graph in July of 2020, food insecurity for households, especially those with kids, is skyrocketing. This is again from the Brookings Institute. Scary stuff.
It is.
The mainstream media is not showing us. These are the lines that are happening at food banks in our country, in the United States, right now.
Wow.
People. These are our neighbors, our friends, and our relatives, everybody. And this is what's happening because these people are unemployed and they can't feed their families, not to mention health insurance.
I noticed that, everybody's, or most of these pictures show people with automobiles. So that shows you that these are not people that were formerly living on the street and just taking advantage of the crisis to get free food. These are guys and gals that had homes and automobiles,
Yeah. These are normal Americans. These are families. These are people who used to be gainfully employed.
Yeah.
And this is not getting better. I wish I could say it was. If Joe Biden gets elected and there's further lockdowns, national lockdowns, this will increase exponentially. Right. Now, one of our problems, and I'm getting near to turning it over to Dennis here, we function off what manufacturers, financial experts call the just-in-time manufacturing system, AIT. And I did a program on this with Michael Bunker, who wrote a great book on prepping. First prepper book that Sue and I ever read. And I'd search Michael Bunker out and search his book out. It's called Living Off the Grid by Michael Bunker. I did an interview with him. He's kind of our prepper hero, the first book we ever read. Get his book and read it. He talks about just-in-time manufacturing. But what is just-in-time? This is literally how our financial system runs, meaning they're only producing goods that are needed in the production process to keep the store shelves full on a weekly basis, monthly basis at the most. That's why you see toilet paper disappearing from the shelves at Walmart because there are no toilet paper stocks in the back of a Walmart or at the toilet paper plant. They're not stocking up for a crisis. They're only stocking to get it just in time for the people in the stores and to keep up with what people are buying. Why do they do this? Well, follow the money, Jerry. It reduces inventory costs. So these companies don't have to stock these supplies and pay for them. It helps them fly lean and mean, and they're all flying lean and mean. So, excuse me, because of competition, companies like Walmart and others are forced to do the just-in-time system so that they can compete with other businesses. Amazon being a prime example. We'll do a program on that later. So there's got to be steady production, high-quality workmanship, no machine breakdowns, and reliable suppliers, and a stable economy for this to work. If the economy has problems because they have no backup food or durable goods supplies, because they have no backups, if the economy goes into crisis, the shelves go empty because there's no reserves. Now, just in case manufacturing, they produce and they hold enough inventories in case there is some kind of crisis. That's fiscally the way it should be done. This is not in use by any corporations. They don't use it because they can't compete if they do. So what this means is, if there is a financial crisis and gas prices go up, which they will eventually, the truckers aren't going to be able to run to bring the food to the stores, and we're going to get this because of the just-in-time system. Understand, everybody, that this system is there. This is the system everybody, Walmart, Target, and all of them are using, and it can break down virtually overnight in a financial collapse. All right. Consumer spending is below the pandemic. According to Standard & Poor's, corporate profits fell 48.96%. Corporate profits fell by almost 50% in this country because of COVID-19. Entire industries have gone out of business. Retail, travel, and tourism got hit badly. Commercial real estate, they've been ruined. These industries have been ruined. From what I have read and my research shows, they will not begin to recover until 2022. Some of them will never recover, ever. What does it mean for those of us that want to be prepared? Understand, everybody, this is not going to get better. It's going to get worse. Lockdowns have already started to, yeah, go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, Kevin, just another thought here is I was thinking about some of the things we've seen on TV recently about people being shut down, locked down, and then somebody right across the street still allowed to open up because they have the right political connections and they say the right things, they do the right things, they contribute to the right political candidate. Yeah. And, you know, this thing has got to be, even with absolute totalitarianism, which I think we're going towards if we don't fight back against this thing, is we're going to see that on steroids, you know, where somebody's getting the food, getting the supplies, and you're not, you know, because you're not deemed necessary or important or valuable to their particular goals, you know?
Yeah, that's right, Dennis. Good patriotic Americans are being forbidden from going to church, engaging in gatherings. Restaurant owners who depend on that to make a living are being told to shut down. They're being told they can't have people inside. They're being given curfews of 10 o'clock in the evening. They have to stop serving, period. While BLM and Antifa engaged in mass protests, packed into streets, and they don't say a thing about that.
Exactly.
What is wrong with that picture? Now, I'd encourage people to go out and look at the program I did on YouTube about Black Lives Matter and who Black Lives Matter really is. It is not a civil rights organization. It is a Marxist organization that is tied directly to the Nation of Islam. I would recommend you go in and see what the Nation of Islam teaches. BLM is getting millions from Coca-Cola. They're getting millions from Kroger now. And these corporations, I don't see how they can know what BLM is all about. They are about overturning America, and it's not about equality. It is literally about destroying traditional America, the traditional family, and proceeding towards Marxism. Check it out. Check my video out. It's pretty serious.
Well, yeah, I mean, also the founder is an avowed and trained Marxist, and she openly admits that.
That's right.
And unfortunately, a lot of the churches are supporting BLM.
Yeah.
In
Once
total
again,
ignorance.
You and I talked about this before. People support these things without even taking the time to check in to who and what they are.
Exactly.
En masse. And I can tell you now, the BLM founders are now extremely wealthy. And BLM has millions of dollars that have been given to them in their bank account
Mm-hmm.
to overturn traditional America, eliminate the family, and
Wow.
especially target Caucasian Americans for retribution.
Now, why is it that if you're doing something that's really evil, you have plenty of money? Do you ever ask yourself
Yeah,
that
yeah. It's like,
question?
is there something wrong with this world system?
Right.
Well, I mean, many of our followers are people of faith, and we kind of understand that, you know, this world system is based on money and greed, pure and simple, and all this money is flowing into. Why isn't this money flowing into family groups that support the family and other things?
Right.
Why is Planned Parenthood getting $500 million a year in our tax money from our government?
Exactly.
Family programs aren't. Yeah, they're.
And why can't we ever stop that? You know?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Let me toss this in. Ephesians 6:12. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against wicked spirits in high places. Read that verse. I mean, the world system is certainly not arrayed for our good.
And if you want proof of that, just look at their eyes.
Yeah. And Alicia Garza, one of the founding Marxist members of BLM, has tattooed on her chest. Go and check me out. It's a poem, and at the end, standing against me may very well cost you your life, tattooed across her chest. Where you can
Wow.
These people are radicals, and at least two of the founding members came out of the radical LGBTQXYZ movement, and then they just morphed into BLM when the BLM started getting money. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, these guys, it reminds me of, you know, you look at this, everything from the street level to the level at the high end of politics. These people have a guardian that seems to have their back all the time, you know, and they're like a kid, and, you know, the kid that was a bully and his parents were standing there watching him do it, or the teacher, and you couldn't do anything about it. And you should have picked up a club and hit him in the head, but you can't do that, you know?
Exactly. That's kind of what we're facing, really. And that's kind of where we're heading in terms of the future of globalism. When I talk about the Great Reset here in a moment, we're going to do a program on that. It's going to scare the daylights out of everybody where this is heading globally, against religious freedom, the First Amendment, against churches, against people of faith. BLM, one of their stated goals is the elimination of traditional America. It is an anti-Christian, anti-Christ organization, no question about it. And I'm talking about the radical LGBTQ. I'm not talking about gay Americans who just want their privacy and love the Constitution, but the gay mafia is siding with BLM and others to eliminate traditional American families and faith in the United States. And that's their goal. So heads up, everybody. Do what you can to protect those rights, because they're being taken. Anything else, Dennis?
No, not right off the top of my head. I'm sure I'll have some more thoughts.
You got it. We segued there, but it's important stuff. All right, let's get back to what we're talking about here. Lockdowns. Joe Biden has said, as most of you probably know, that if he's elected, he's going to lock down the entire country, making it worse, as I mentioned a couple of times, than it is now. 60 million Americans have filed new claims for unemployment benefits in 60 million people and families. A lot of these jobs, many of them will never come back. A lot of these small businesses will never come back. The people who have been laid off by their companies will never get their job back. And many of them don't have the skills for any other kind of job. And Dennis will talk about how to prepare later, but I would recommend now that you start diversifying your skill set and start learning other ways that you can make money ahead of time outside of just the experience that you have and your skill set, because multiple streams of wealth are one thing that are going to help you. Anyway, move on. Widespread distribution of vaccines. Here we go, everybody. This is from Citibank and Visa. Widespread distribution of vaccines to combat the coronavirus pandemic and the ongoing monetary easing could cause the US dollar to weaken and to lessen in value by as much as 20% in 2021. Now, let me explain what that means. These are bankruptcy filings in corporations. I just want to point out the green ones that go down towards the bottom of the screen, those are Chapter 11 bankruptcy filings by corporations that have had to restructure or go straight into bankruptcy. Those are corporations. Above is Chapter 7. That's where you declare bankruptcy and you don't pay any of your assets back. And you can see the effect that COVID has had on Chapter 11s below and Chapter 7 bankruptcies above. Going up to 2020, these are being filed, once again, from the Brookings Institute. And if you can go back, you guys, if you want to, and rewatch this and pause and look at some of these graphs. Now, the 20% drop in the US dollar by the end of 2021, combined with the economic impact of COVID-19 in our economy, experts are proposing and predicting that the US dollar could drop as much as 30% in its value. The second pandemic wave could send us into a double dip recession, which will, experts are saying, and here's Citigroup, says the dollar may drop about 20%, as I said, next year, and Bloomberg. Combined with the COVID vaccine will cause the US dollar to decline by more than 30% by the end of 2021. I'm getting near the end of this, so hang with me. That's from former Morgan Stanley chief economist Stephen Roach, who is predicting and warning that the dollar could lose value by as much as 30% by the end of 2021. Now, what does that mean? Excuse me. Here's your dollar on the left. Well, your dollar will only be worth now 70 cents on the right. So every dollar you spend, you're going to have to spend an additional 30 cents on each dollar. What does that mean in terms of gas? What does that mean if you purchase a car? What does that mean if you purchase milk and eggs? It means that they're going up by that much, dollar per dollar. And this is going to happen in 2021, everybody. Gas prices, you can count on it, they're going to go up. Under a Biden administration, they will go up. And the government is even talking about increasing the gas tax. I think the gas tax now, Dennis, is 75 cents a gallon that we spend goes to, as a tax. 75 cents. Yeah. And it's going to get worse. 30%, everybody, of everything that we buy. The dollar is going to lose that much in value because of COVID.
And speaking of gas, who ever thought we'd get gas prices as low as they are right now when we were back in the 80s? You know?
Yeah. Once again, Donald Trump's robust economy. Right. I mean, Trump's economy was the most robust economy in U.S. history and the biggest economy in the world. And this little microscopic virus, as I mentioned, slipped over into the United States and destroyed the economy. The election of Donald Trump, in my humble view, Trump should have won by a very wide margin. The fact that it was that close was bizarre in and of itself, not to mention the fraud they're investigating now. But the fact that the election was that close because the media created Lunchbox Joe in the minds of millions of people, but the virus came in and destroyed a robust economy. It's bizarre. It's bizarre. So just understand, everybody,
and the Chinese are and the Chinese news media are openly bragging about what they are able to do with this virus to the U.S. economy. You know,
that's right. And it was at a time when Donald Trump, the first president in history. Now, I was in the counterespionage group in the CIA. It was fully known that China was our #1 economic and espionage enemy globally. We were so frustrated to see the Department of State and others snuggling up to our biggest global enemy, but that's what they did. But the first president in U.S. history to directly confront China was Donald Trump. Even Ronald Reagan didn't touch confronting China, because China, year by year, was stealing billions of dollars from us in trade. The Trump administration confronted that. They busted espionage agents in our universities and in our embassies and around the world, and in our corporations. Several of these agents were arrested. Others were sent back to China. So China was on the carpet. We even had the rest of the world, like Japan, pulling its businesses out of China. And all of a sudden, this virus gets released from China, destroys the entire economy, gets the president of the United States himself, and brings our election because of mail-in ballots so close that we're going through what we're going through now. Was it intentional by China? There's a whistleblower just came out of the Wuhan laboratory in China claiming that it is genetically engineered. Some scientists are convinced that it is, and then of course you always got the mainstream media ones that say it's not. But the whistleblower has just come out and said that that is indeed the case. Either way, this is a virus from China that stopped are confronting China. Donald Trump's confronting China for the wicked things they've been doing for years.
And you know what, Kevin? I mean, if in a normal world, being friends with China, either openly or secretly, like some of our political officials are, and some of all the big tech industries and all the things they're doing over there, that should have been the kiss of death. If everybody was aware of what China is, how they treat their people, what kind of totalitarian things are coming our way, if we use that as a model, which many of these guys have openly spoken about. And I mean, in Russia, at least in the Cold War, you knew where the enemy was, and they weren't portrayed as a wonderful, example for us to follow. And that's kind of what they're doing with China,
Exactly. That is what they have done. Congressmen and senators have done that. Corporations have done that.
Yep.
Joe Biden and Barack Obama did that. And here we are in a crisis situation with regards to China. It's insane. All right. Let me get back here and go on, and then I'll turn it over to you here, Dennis. Excuse me, everybody. All right, let's move on a little bit. And I want to talk about this quickly. Countries now are abandoning the US dollar as the world reserve currency. And as I turn it over to Dennis, let me just go through these so you know. China and Japan plan to use their currencies in bilateral trade instead of the US dollar. China and Russia, this was a blip in the mainstream media, and then they haven't talked about it again, as serious as it is. China and Russia plan to use their own currencies in trade instead of the US dollar, and they're pushing for the yuan, Chinese yuan, to become the world reserve currency. They're doing that right now, everybody. The use of Chinese currency is increasing in Africa. China, United Arab Emirates are planning to use their own currencies instead of the US dollar. Saudi Arabia may abandon the US petrodollar when trading with China. That's massive. The BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, they're planning to use their own currencies and abandon the US dollar as the world currency. Of course, India is using gold to buy oil from Iran. Now, what does that mean? Why is it serious? Well, the United Nations, go out, I'd encourage you all to Google this, research this. The United Nations itself is pushing openly for a new world reserve currency to depart from the US dollar. Here's a quote. I'll talk about the global reset in a moment. Quote, a new global reserve system that no longer relies on the US dollar as the single major reserve currency, unquote, United Nations. Now, the UN is talking now about the global reset. We'll do a whole program on that. And the slogan, Joe Biden's slogan, Build Back Better, that's going to scare the daylights out of you. More on that later. International Monetary Fund. I've been warning about this for years, several years. The IMF is planning for a new world reserve currency and abandoning the US dollar as the global reserve. What will that do to us? Well, in an already financially unstable situation, it will cause an economic tsunami in the United States if these countries depart from using the US dollar as a world reserve currency. Massive inflation, interest rates will soar on our mortgages, our cars, our loans. There will be huge increases in the price of food, clothing, and gasoline, and it's going to be virtually impossible to refinance the national debt in this country if this happens. And these countries are working, as well as the United States and the IMF are working, everybody, to make this happen on top of everything else. I have said this in previous programs, there is a global currency coming. There is a digital currency coming, mark my words. Some people won't make this prediction. I will, based on everything I've read and researched on this. There is a digital currency coming, first in the United States. The Federal Reserve is talking about creating a digital currency right now as we speak. And of course, the World Economic Forum, the International Monetary Fund, and the central banks are talking. Visa is talking about a digital currency to replace the devaluing US dollar as a global digital currency. Yeah, did you hear that, everybody? Digital currency. Heads up, watch the news. This stuff is coming out at monthly or more. There's new information about this. A global digital dollar. Facebook is trying to bring in the Libra as a new digital currency. They failed the first time around. They're trying again. But a lot of countries are pushing for, Russia and China, is for the yuan to become the new reserve currency and replace the US dollar. This would cause a catastrophe in the United States on top of everything else. Joe Biden Notice on the front of his podium, build back better. Now, there's some people that will have an interpretation for it. It says text united to 30330. I have listeners out there that the number 33 and the number 3, that means something to some cloaked organizations. 33 is a big Masonic number, 33 level and things. But anyway, I don't get deep into that. I'll let them do that. But it's funny that that's on there. But I want you to look at Build Back Better on his podium. Initially, you think, well, that's just Biden being a goof again. No, it's not. It's intentional. That term was not invented by Joe Biden. It was invented by the United Nations. Build back better to a global economy. The World Economic Forum. Go out and check it out. You can see Klaus, whatever his name, talking about the global reset. Excuse me, and behind him on the wall of World Economic Forum, it says, build back better, a new global economy. Justin Trudeau, who I think is a chilling individual, that is one scary dude. He just came out with a speech, you can find it, where he talks about the importance of build back better. So Biden didn't get this on his own, everybody. It came from the global push for a global economy and a global financial system. Once again, that should scare the daylights out of all of us. All right, as I close, see, these are my financial projections based on everything that I've researched. And just coming from the research that I've done, your humble correspondent, unemployment will continue to rise. National poverty rate will increase. Homelessness is going to increase. Rising crime will grow exponentially. We're seeing that right now. It's going to get worse. Add defund the police to that, and good night, Irene. But crime is growing exponentially right now in our cities. New York, off the charts. Chicago, off the charts. I think crime has gone up in New York City 30% since COVID-19 hit. Riots and looting are going to increase. The BRIC countries I just showed you are going to depart from the USD, US dollar as a reserve currency. That's coming. Tensions with China, which are already growing, and there may be a military conflict with China. Chinese general has come out, you can Google this, and said if the US keeps confronting China, then they may take military action. Heads up. More, I'm gonna close. Taxes are gonna skyrocket. If Joe Biden gets in, watch it, everybody. Your taxes are gonna go up, gas prices are gonna go up, things are gonna become unaffordable. With gas prices, Biden has said that he wants to stop fossil fuel oil production and he wants to stop fracking, which will drive gas. Those are the two things, especially fracking, that drove gas prices down because the Trump administration encouraged that. Biden wants to stop fracking and eliminate oil production, which is going to put gas prices probably up at France levels of $4 a gallon or more, if he pulls that off. Your utility bills are going to go up. I think in Florida, I have kids in Jacksonville, their utility bills just went up 20%. Utility prices are going to increase. Healthcare costs are going to go up. Interest on the national debt will get to the point where we cannot pay it off. The value of the dollar will decrease, especially in the COVID economy. Small businesses are going to close even more. With more shutdowns, especially, there's going to be more corporate layoffs. I don't want to ruin everybody's day. I just ruined my own. We're doing this, Dennis and I are doing this to alert you all so that you know what is coming ahead of time. The only way to stop an enemy, the only way to prepare for a catastrophe is to see the signs ahead of time. Begin preparing yourself now. I've just presented to you the state of our economy and what's coming. So be prepared. And how do you do that? Well, I'm going to turn it over to Dennis, who I consider an expert on this. And Dennis, I'll roll it over to you and let you start beginning and letting everybody know what can we do to prepare for what we now know is coming.
Okay, we'll do. Well, let me get the screen up here.
Once again, I always stress it's important. Faith is important during this time because you've got to have a support system, your church, your community, as you go into. That's a big part of this whole thing because what most people depend on in terms of this world system is collapsing.
I'm going to do that one more time here. I'm having a little technical difficulty.
No worries, piece of cake. And as if any of you have watched our prepper channel here on this program, I've showed you some of the things we've done on our off-grid farm here, and we've made ourselves totally self-sufficient. All right, there we go. Take it away, Dennis.
All right. Are you seeing full screen yet?
Got it. Looks good.
All right. Very good. Okay. Well, Kevin asked me to do a little bit of a background bio on some of the preparation I've been doing and other things. And one of the things that got me started, I guess, was way back in the 60s and 70s. I went through some pretty severe survival training in the United States Army Green Berets. And so that got me into a survival mindset and started me to look at things that you wouldn't normally look at and see everything as a potential damage. You know, maybe that's a little too severe, but you start looking at things that most people don't see and see things that other people aren't paying attention to. So the same thing with the COVID thing. You know, I started preparing physically maybe 20 years ago, long before COVID, but just looking at the world's situation and how things are so unstable from a number of different points and how things could actually, you know, disappear in a hurry. So what I want to cover with you guys today is how to develop a survival mindset, because this tyranny that's we're seeing all around us is going to have an impact on the family that maybe most of you haven't thought about yet. Maybe some of you have. So we're going to go over what to expect as near as we can tell, how to prepare and how to resist, because I think it's critical that we resist this. And we can do it in a lot of ways that are different from maybe just confrontation on the street or something like that. Resist the overall thing that they're trying to do to us. One of the things we need to think about is we need to get tougher, and we need to get tougher mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, and especially spiritually, because we're in a spiritual conflict. This is no doubt in my mind. This is a satanic plan to take down one of the best countries in the world that I think God wants to survive a little while longer. So I think we're going to win this one. I know we're going to win this one ultimately. What the interim looks like is going to be as near as we can put together from the facts and what we're seeing developing. But we're going to learn what to expect, and also to expect the unbelievable or the unexpected. And one of the things that keeps people from preparing is they find it difficult to believe what they've never experienced. And that can cover a lot of areas. It's called cognitive dissonance. You know, if you haven't been through a major disaster where everything went to heck for 6 weeks, you're probably not going to think it's going to ever happen to you. But that's what happens to everybody. It's just one of those things. It's part of the psyche of the human mind. If you haven't seen it personally, you don't usually take it that seriously. And only a small percentage of the population will actually prepare for something that they haven't personally experienced. And I've heard it said that about 10% of the population will do something about what they know is coming, but they won't do it often enough or repeat it often enough to make a difference. And only about 3% will actually prepare, do something about it, and keep doing something about it to where they're actually experienced enough and prepared enough to survive. So kind of have to take your own analysis and think, where am I in this situation, and what am I not seeing that's coming, or what can I not believe? In the scientific community, there's a similar condition to that. It's called paradigm paralysis, that prevents a scientist from actually seeing new information that they believe is not true. So in other words, they have a preconceived idea that you can't go faster than light. They're not going to take any interest in going faster than light. You know, that's just an example, but I've seen that in action. I mean, in my life, I've seen scientists who just could not take in this new information because they already had a paradigm believing that that doesn't exist, or that wasn't the way to go. Well, and I don't know what to expect. I'll just go over these, and then we'll talk about them in a little bit more as we go through this. But one of the things that's going to happen is the interruption of supply lines, and that's because there's just less people working, for one thing. And then there's also the expectation of safety when these truckers go into a city. And if they're burning the city down, they're probably not going to go into the city, you know, or make deliveries. So anyway, we can go into that a little bit later. Food shortages or difficulty in getting the basic goods and services are probably a real possibility. we're already seeing a little bit of that. Restrictions in travel and possible COVID-19 testing or vaccination checkpoints. And again, these are things that the powers to be that want to make this a permanent lockdown are already talking about. And they're not talking about them in any light way either. They want us to lock it down hard and fast to make sure nobody gets through the cracks. Forced vaccinations or severe restrictions of privileges without the vaccine. They're already talking about that. Bank accounts frozen, or the elimination of cash. And again, a control mechanism because you won't do what they're telling you to do. Just like you got to wear a mask to come in here and grocery shop, or you got to wear a mask to do this or that. And then some are so extreme, they're talking about wearing masks 24 hours a day and outside, inside, everywhere. And the right to peaceful assembly infringed because that goes along with restriction in travel. And also they're telling us all the time, they don't want us to celebrate Christmas or Easter or any of the holidays with our family. They don't want us to get together. They want to stay apart, stay in fear over something that's way overblown. The right to criticize the actions of state or local politicians will probably be severely limited or limited or eliminated. We're already seeing that. I mean, the free speech is pretty well shut down, and now they actually want to pass a law that says, like in Virginia, they were talking about passing a law where we couldn't criticize our political officials. It'd become illegal, just like hate speech.
Yep.
And then martial law declared with tyrannical curfews, travel restrictions, or mostly eliminated. Already we're seeing in the current state of events, certain states, stopping people coming across the border because they want you to do a 2-week, I forgot what the term is. You stay in place until you're not sick. What's the term? I forgot it.
Quarantine. Yeah.
Quarantine. There you go. Okay. But that's already, we're seeing that already. So let's look at interruption of supply lines, which of course is going to lead to food shortages or difficulty in getting basic goods and services. First thing I would suggest to everybody is just take an inventory of what you need to keep things, quote, normal in your home. I mean, make sure you don't have to go anywhere to get them. So, I mean, it could be anything from toilet paper to food and water, to electricity, to fuel for your automobile, to medicine. Basically, they're going to try to take this away from you and use it as a weapon of control. And if you don't need to go somewhere, like in point B, being prepared is actually empowering yourself to resist. This food's going to be used as a weapon to control the masses. If you don't need if you don't need what they're restricting or rationing or removing, they can't control you because you can stay home and be okay. Or there's just the more independent and secure our communities are, the more we're able to resist the tyranny that they want to put on us. That's like, buy local, buy natural movement. There's a lot of wisdom in that. And, make sure you have a way to filter your water and store water, because that may become a priority, or they may restrict water. Get extra gas if you can, and off-road transportation if possible. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, but the ability to maybe take another route because you have a vehicle that will take that different route, it could save your life. The ability to defend yourself and your family, the Second Amendment. I mean, these are all basic things, but just take an inventory personally and go through and see what you might need in the next few months, because it's coming fast. And we've seen that the length of time between when they say they're going to do something and when they do it is getting a lot shorter. Restriction of travel, vaccine checkpoints, and this is what really gets me upset, because I'm not taking a vaccine, and none of my family has ever taken vaccines because of what we feel like are the risks involved. And no matter how they try to spin this thing, it's a violation of your rights to freely move about the country, right to privacy. In America, we have the right to move, and the right to privacy, and the right to privacy in our medical choices. And nobody should be able to hold you down and put you in a position where you can't refuse this. And they're probably not going to go that. It's probably not going to do this. Not going to be that extreme at first. But what they'll do is just restrict what you can do. And these could last for a while. These kind of things that we're talking about, or they could be restored, and hopefully restored. But they could come on us and last for a while until we fight back and be able to actually push some of these restrictions back. But that's going to take some time. It's going to take lawsuits. It's going to take resistance, and be prepared to stay at home for a while and avoid the checkpoints if possible. And of course, they're going to try to keep you in your house, so you don't want to be, under their control. You want to have the freedom and the resources to be able to stay out from under whatever they're trying to put on you. And all these attempts are an attempt to remove the dissidents from society. And of course, in this case, we're the dissidents now. So suddenly you're going to find yourself into a new category. And we talked about forced vaccines, but if you look at the patterns that they float, when they get a new idea, they float it in socialist Europe, and I should have added Canada to this, but Germany, England, Australia, New Zealand, China, they pattern it after communist China. But you start looking at those countries and what they're doing, and the tendency as an American to say, well, that's them, and I don't really care what's going on over there. But that's usually within a few weeks or months, they're going to start talking about it here. And you'll see them. You just listen to what they say. And first, used to be people would come up with a crazy idea, and everybody say, "Oh, that's crazy. It's never going to be implemented." And they've said that about this, because I've had friends and neighbors and relatives say that they're not going to do that. Turn around, they do. And believe me, when they tell you they're going to do it, they're going to do it if they can, unless somebody stops them. And that's the road it's going in. And hopefully, Trump will be able to pull this off and take his well-deserved election. But if that doesn't happen, things could go south real fast. And you don't have to believe me, just listen to what they're saying they want you to do, I covered that. For me, that's a line in the sand is a vaccine. And everybody has got to determine where their line in the sand is. But at some point, you're going to say, I'm not going to do that. I don't care what they try to do to me.
Hey, Dennis?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, if I may just interject too, something that they're not telling a lot of people. It's like the flu vaccine. The flu mutates, and most of the time, the flu vaccine is a crapshoot. You're not getting vaccinated for the existing flu virus because they don't know what it is. With COVID-19, they're just talking about one strain of COVID for a vaccination, which could mutate into other strains like the influenza, making a COVID vaccine basically just a waste of time. So people need to understand that. Yeah,
absolutely. Because I guess I assume a certain amount of knowledge here, but you're right. Not everybody's thinking the same way on this. And that vaccine is an mRNA vaccine. And if you want to understand that, think of a genetically modified corn or vegetable. And it actually modifies your DNA, and that's how they get the resistance. But they have no idea what that's going to do long term. And by modifying your DNA, you become something else. And God only knows what they have in mind for us. But that's just one of the points. If you look at it,
if I may, they don't know what the long-term repercussions are of the RNA used in the vaccine because they haven't studied it and haven't had the time to study it. So they don't even know what these RNA injections vaccines are going to do over the long term.
Yeah, and you add that to, again, this is probably considered conspiracy by a lot of people, but you look at what Bill Gates is saying openly. I've seen open presentations where he's talked about the population has to be reduced to something near zero. And they used to say 80%, 90%. Now they're saying 95%. He had an equation up where he said, one of these is going to go to zero, and I'll give you a guess on which one it's going to be, And now he's in charge of, I believe, for the United Nations vaccine program.
Yeah.
And so you start putting those dots together, and it's I don't trust what they're trying to do to us. And if it's so good, why would they have to force anything?
Well, yeah.
Why would they have to make sure that, because
right.
My kids and my grandchildren, they treat them, they don't get vaccinated, and they treat them in school like they're disease carriers because they're not vaccinated. When in fact, the vaccine group is the disease carrier. That's the one that's had the disease injected into them. It's had the mercury and formaldehyde in the fetal tissue and all that stuff.
Well, and as I think many of my listeners know, Bill Gates stands to, as Dr. Fauci does, but Bill Gates stands to benefit to the tune of billions of dollars from the global vaccine. And you follow the money, Jerry, as always. You know, now, I like, and I'll let you get back to Dennis. I like RFK Jr.'s website about vaccines and things. And if you go to RFK Jr.'s website and look at the information that he has on vaccines, I recommend everybody do that because his stuff is researched and well documented, including Bill Gates. I'd go to JFK Jr.'s site and check that out.
Yeah, I actually just read an article by him last night, believe it or not, and he's got some good stuff.
He does.
Okay, we've talked about the severe restrictions and roadblocks. Buying and selling may be restricted if you don't have the vaccination. It could be just like the Walmart and the mask. You know, you can't get in unless you can prove you're vaccinated. And of course, they've got little tracking devices they've been working on and dyes to be able to see, you know, what you can scan with a certain either radio frequency or you scan with a light and like a black light and see the thing show up on you, so you can't, you know, you can't deceive them. And the stores may not let you in. So we need to plan to be able to not have to go to the store for a while until we get this thing straightened out. And you're talking about digital currency, and that's another thing where they're going to hang that over your head if you don't have some way of bartering, you know, or something.
Yeah, and if I may interject just for a moment, real quickly, you know, Revelation chapter 13 says this: "Let him who has understanding or knowledge calculate the number of the beast." And then it lists that number and says that no one will be able to buy or sell without that number. You're talking about an algorithm, data, a digital thing that will only be able to be discovered by somebody that understands that sort of thing. So 10 years ago, I thought Revelation 13 sometime in the future. Man, the technology's there now, and they're pushing to use it now. Anyway, sorry, Dennis, go ahead.
No, that's true, and yeah, they've been pushing. I mean, they've had this idea for a long time, and of course, I guess the idea could go back to the beginning of time, and you know, where Satan's launching the Antichrist, and he's had this plan for a long time. But I remember a guy by the name of Willard Canelon wrote a book called The Day the Dollar Dies, and that was back in the 70s. I remember reading that thing, and he basically was going through the same thing we're seeing now. And he saw it way ahead of time. And of course, they didn't have the technology, like you say, to be able to do it now. And it's interesting that the mark of the beast talks about on your right hand or forehead, and it also says on or in. So it could be subcutaneous, you know, and that falls right in line with everything.
Yep.
Well, the right to peaceful assembly and fringe, we've already seen that. They're already pushing that hard. And unfortunately, people aren't really listening to them. They're still getting together with their families for the most part. But the thing that's scary about this is they're going to start encouraging people snitching on each other, and they're already doing that. If you say something, see something, and already people are being accosted, you know, and because somebody turned them in because they went over to their families for Thanksgiving and had too many people or something like that. So you can expect that to get worse and worse, and that's going to be one of the things that's going to be the most difficult to get around, because they've turned us against each other. You look at the guy and you don't know whether he's going to turn you in or he's going to be on your side, you know, and as it gets worse, that's going to get worse. And then the ability to actually say something when you believe your politician is out of line, or even your local sheriff or your local mayor. If they get, like I say, in Virginia, they're starting to talk about this, to where they can't, you know, the criticism of a political official is going to be hate speech, and they're going to make it illegal. You know, I mean, if we can't even say anything about these guys, wow. I mean, they've tightened the noose on silence and being able to communicate with each other, and you know, refute the enemies of the system, basically. Martial law could be declared, in my opinion. Joe Biden will probably do it pretty quick if he gets any resistance. I think Donald Trump is a little hesitant to go there because exercised a lot of restraint, in my opinion, on calling in the National Guard. He waited for the governor to ask him to send the National Guard in, which is the constitutional way it should go. I don't think Biden will have any of those kind of restraints on him or anybody else that works for him. But they could really shut things down hard, and that may turn to an armed conflict. And America is great because it's free and it's good, and our freedom created some of the most innovative things that the planet has ever seen. I mean, there's no equal to what we've been able to do, and that's because we could try things. You might fail, but capitalism gives you the ability to try and fail, and then you try and you fail again, and you try and then maybe you succeed. But if you think about it, America went from I think it was 2003, went from the moon, or went from the first airplane to a manned moon landing in 67 years, and that's absolutely astonishing. And you think of the rate of progress, and then you take today how so many areas progress has been artificially stymied and slowed down because it wasn't to the advantage of those who want to control us and keep us, stomped down into the mud. And if you notice, the people at the top always have plenty. I mean, they've got their security people, they've got their gated mansions and communities, and they're never wanting for transportation or food or anything else that we have to work for to put it on the table. If you put a wild animal in a cage, it's either going to become depressed and just like a shadow of itself. I don't know if you've ever seen a black bear walking back and forth in the cage. They just stroke back and forth and back and forth, and they're not happy, or they'll find a way out. And my son actually had a Secret Service dog that you couldn't cage that guy. No matter what you put him in, he'd break it. And they actually had to build a specific super reinforced cage for him just to keep him inside. He didn't want to be caged. You put a chicken in the cage, he'll keep eating and laying eggs, and that's kind of where they want us. If you put an eagle in the same cage, it's going to beat its wings raw trying to get to be free. I actually had a little personal note here. I actually had a crow when I was a kid, and somebody stole him and put him in a cage. When I got him back, his wings were all beat up because he was trying to get out of that cage because he'd never been caged in his life, even though he was a pet. He was free. And this is just some of the things I'll go over, some of the things I'm doing personally. It doesn't mean you have to do it this way or anything else. You do your own analysis and figure out what you need and want. But these are just areas that I'm looking into. Water is one, food is another, communications, backup communications, transportation, and heating, because I think those are the things I'm most concerned with right now. Now here's just an example. This is a portable drinking filter, basically. It's a Seychelles sport bottle, and this thing will take out all the way down to the micron level. Some of them won't take out microns. This will take out viruses at the micron level, submicron, and radiation, as well as toxic chemicals and everything else you can drink right out of a ditch. And they're not expensive, maybe in the $40 range, and you afford to have one in a vehicle. You get trapped somewhere, you need fresh water, you've got it. I mean, you see so many survival modes where people get stuck, and they had to go for days, and they either got to drink, find a way to heat water and boil it, or they got to take a chance on the microbes in the water in the stream, or they got to dehydrate. So this one, you get around all of that, if you had one with you. So those are the kind of things you can get. I also have a big Berkey water filter at home where I can just pour water in the top, and it fills a couple gallon container. I got water for the day. And I also have a 550 gallon tank at home, which again, that wasn't too expensive either, but I got that in the corner of a garage. It doesn't even take up a lot of room. And I've got 550 gallons. I don't have to worry about storing a bunch of milk bottles, putting them somewhere. And it's easy to clean out and dump and refresh and put your water purification stuff in it. And so we're good. I also have a well, but this is on top of the well. I also have food, and these things you can get very easily online. There's a lot of people selling them right now. You can get about a year's supply of food and put it under the bed, or almost. So again, you can find a spot, an empty place in the closet, or make a little pile in the middle of the room and put a tablecloth on it. Everybody thinks it's a table. So done that before too, but you got to be able to eat. And then so this is something I've done at home. This is my little communications table. I mean, it's nothing fancy. It's just a folding table with a cloth on top of it. But I've got a 10-meter, well, it's actually all band ham radio. And I also have a 2-meter ham radio up here for local repeater use. This is more long range. I've got a GMRS radio. This is actually an old refurbished Motorola radio, life and safety radio, and they're dirt cheap online. The only caveat is you got to have either a Motorola dealer or like a ham radio guy or somebody that's got some knowledge to program it for you. But once it's programmed, you're all set. And that radio is probably 20 years old, and it's never given me a bit of problem. I mean, it's like a brick. It's hard to break them. And then when the electricity goes out, I've got a backup solar generator, and this guy actually have an EMP cage for it. It looks very similar to this. This is not the cage, but you couldn't tell the difference on the way, except for the wrapping, how it's sealed up. But this will run a radio for months, and it'll run a lot of stuff for quite a period of time. Run a refrigerator, small refrigerator, different things like that you might need, plus lights. And you can see all the different things you can plug into it. You know, your normal AC plugs and all your devices that you need to plug into. There's a cigarette lighter plug, and then here's a couple heavy duty 25 amp plug-ins where you just stick a wire in there. And I use that for the radios because I need a pretty good amperage. But you want to do something simple is I'd recommend this is this is a Baofeng radio. This is an F8, which means it's 8 watts. So it's a little more powerful than what you might pick up in a hardware store. The hardware store stuff is maybe a watt to, some of them go up to 5 watts, but most of them are 1 or 2 watts. Some of them are less than that. And that, again, that's GMRS, but this can be programmed for anything. I mean, anything in a UHF, VHF band. Well, basically, there's the frequencies, 136 to 174. Then it jumps up to UHF, and it's 400 to 520. If that doesn't mean anything to you guys, don't worry about it. It just covers a broad range of everything from railroad radios to life and safety radios to police radios. It doesn't cover aircraft radios, but GMRS, MURS, FRS, all those normal things preppers use and to communicate. But if you think about it, if you can't communicate, you got a real disadvantage. And one of the things when something happens and you're really locked down hard, or we have a natural disaster, one of the first things you want to do is talk to somebody and say, hey, what's it like over in your house, you know, or family, if your family's close enough to be able to communicate with them. That's another thing. And also situational awareness. You want to be able to reach out, even if you do it just locally. Just take something like this. You can talk about 5 miles on it, radio to radio, similar radios under average terrain. You know, in the city it'll be less, and if you get blocked by hills and mountains, it'll be less, unless you're on top of a mountain. But this guy will really get the job done. And right now I have a group of people who have these, and they've chosen to go to in this category, MURS frequency, which is unlicensed free frequency. And then here's a J-pole antenna, and this antenna is a ham-tested common antenna that's available online for not too much money. And you can take this thing and you attach it to your little radio, and you get this, you know, little curled up antenna that you can put in a backpack or, you know, anywhere, stores easily. You throw that up over a tree and you've got, you know, 3 to 5 times more power, or more amplification of the power that you have more correctly. And I mean, it really extends the range of these little things. And then if you use this microphone, which you can also buy as an accessory, it makes the thing very easy to use, and you can just hang it up somewhere, and you know, for probably under $100 for all this stuff, you can get pretty well prepared. This is what I've got at home. This is just a lamp stand right next to the bed, and you know, I've got the antenna that's going down and hung over a windowsill. I've got the microphone up here, and I just turn the thing on, and you know, I can hit repeaters for long distances and go quite a ways away just with a little simple device like this. And there's the antenna, just how simple it is, just to throw it over your windowsill. Or you can put it out the window if you got a place to go. And then I've got my equipment is radio equipped. So this is my Jeep, and this is a ham radio I've got in here. And that'll go between vehicles to vehicles. That'll get me 25, 30 miles. And if I hit a repeater, that'll take me up, up over 100 miles, and depending on the circumstances. So it's ready to rock too. And just talking about vehicles, here's a second vehicle. You can see how the snow hits Virginia sometimes, but this one's also radio equipped. It's just an old Explorer, not a fancy car, 2005, but it is radio equipped, and I can talk to friends and family with it. And there's what the ham radio looks like in there. And then speaking of vehicles, you might give some consideration to how well your vehicle performs in a non-standard traditional situation. Like maybe I have to cross over a highway and go down through the ditch and come out the other side, or to avoid a riot or something like that. So, not everybody can go out and get a different vehicle. I'm not saying you should do that, but I'm just saying when you would get a vehicle, think about capability of it, off-road capability. And you might run into something like this. This is just a little low water bridge down near me. I go through here all the time. I just took the car down there, the Jeep down there, take a look, and there was a roadblock ahead. So, you may run into unexpected circumstances, and it's nice if you can actually just turn around and get out of something or go across something. And just to give that a consideration. Now shows you some of the capabilities. This is the back of my property, and I actually have, I've cleared some areas to where I can get out of my land. There's one road coming into the neighborhood, and no official roads out, but I've made my own unofficial road out. So if they're coming down to the front door, I'm going out the back door. So just survival mentality. Not saying everybody should do this, but just start thinking about things like that. What if they put a COVID roadblock at the end of the road? What if we got an Antifa coming down into the neighborhood? Something like that, where you're not gonna fight them. You're gonna get out. But I'd probably put up a little more resistance before I took off. But that's just me. And here's a generator. It's a 20 kilowatt generator that runs off gas. And the reason I use gas, this is a backup that will just automatically turn on, when the power goes out, and it's real nice. I am working on some EMP protection for this. This is in the current state is not EMP protected, but that's something to keep in the back of your mind, like some of the other shows that we did. There's the power supply, or the gas fuel supply, and it's a couple 1,000 gallon tanks. You only get about 800 out of them. That's about 1,600 gallons. But if I use that intermittently, I can run that generator about 1.5 years. And again, that's only running 2 or 3 hours a day, which is really about all you need to, get a hot shower, wash your clothes, charge batteries, do different things like that. And that was the plan for this. And also I have, traditional heating, heat pumps and all that sort of thing, but I also have a pellet stove that we use, and this little guy will heat the whole house. And I've got my garage full of pellets. So I've got backup to the backup. And then the third backup is a wood stove, and that's in the basement. So we can either move to the basement under extreme conditions, or we can heat the whole house. We leave the basement door open. So this is a lifesaver. And I live in the woods, so I can get wood. And there's my wood supply. Not a great one, but it's a start. Keep me going for a couple of months, and I can, as you can see, I can cut wood around me and pick up dead wood. So I'm not going to freeze myself out. And then finally, I guess I would say to you guys, stay prepared, but don't lose hope. Look for the light at the end of the tunnel. This is actually a SOG recon team that from Vietnam era, and most of those guys are mountain yards, and one American. So that pretty much concludes what I've prepared. You want to say anything, Kevin?
Yeah. And back to the main screen here, Dennis. We're giving everybody some practical things that they can use instead of just showing, and apologize, the sun is setting to my right in my off the grid
Yeah.
studio.
I've got a guy standing outside the window here in the back porch in my daughter's house, and I'm not sure what he wants.
Well, we better let you get out here and confront that dude.
No, that's all right.
Yeah, we've got a mailman that won't even come down here. He dropped packages off up in our ATV and stuff. And that's fine with us. Anyway, this is practical things for everybody to use. And Dennis and I are going to do a lot more programs on this. We'll have, I've got one coming up that's going to be on the Great Reset. That is pretty chilling. But Dennis and I will be back with more of this. And Dennis, I just wanted to thank you for coming on and providing such an excellent presentation on kind of the practical side of how to prepare for this stuff that's coming.
Well, that's no problem. It's a pleasure to be here and start to, raise the awareness of what we may be facing,
Yeah, and as my viewers know, I screen my guests pretty thoroughly, and I consider Dennis not only a friend, but also an expert in this sort of thing. So you can be sure that you will see him again. We'll have him back on. Dennis, thanks for joining us.
Sure thing, Kevin. Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you next time.
Yes, sir.
All right, let me go down here and stand by just a moment, ladies and gentlemen, as we close out. Oops, there we go. I'll give you a little bit of what's coming up as we close out here, the program. And I mentioned this with Dennis just a little while ago. We're going to be talking about generating your own power, which Dennis, some of which he covered in really excellent fashion. And I'll show you what we do here as Dennis does. We have a redundancy program. With if number one fails, we can go to number two. If that fails, we can go to number three. And with Murphy's Law being what it is, that's a good thing to do. We'll be talking about growing your own food, water sources. Dennis covered some of that. Livestock survival. There's a lot of misinformation out there about livestock that we want to talk about. A lot of people say, well, if things go bad, I'll just hunt deer. Well, that'll last maybe a month. During the Depression, deer were almost extinct because that's what everybody was doing. We'll get into that. Multiple streams of wealth, how to expand, how you're making money out from just what you're doing now. Personal protection. Dennis and I will come on and talk about what we do for personal protection in regards to if things do go bad. And we're not just concerned about the government going south, but I have been and still am very concerned about roving gangs of murderous thugs coming in and trying to steal people's things and kill them, which we've already seen in some incidents of riots in the United States. And in South Africa, they're breaking into farmers' houses, murdering them and taking their things. So personal protection is big. We'll talk about medical supplies. So Dennis and I, and we'll get into all these things in great detail. So hang with us. More programs coming. We'll talk in detail about a bug out bag. Dennis and I will probably come on and talk about that as we go on, and how to live off the grid, which is the ultimate goal. You can catch me on my new website, which we have made bulletproof because I get attacked. I think I got attacked 250 times in 10 minutes on this website from Turkey. I've got attacks from Turkey, several within the United States, and I think I know who that rascal is. But a Fortune 500 guy who liked my message came on and helped us put in the protection on kevinship.com. It's really cool. So we got that bulletproof. I'm moving all of my YouTube videos and other things from YouTube over to kevinship.com as YouTube continues to censor things. It's amazing I haven't been censored already. They've restricted some of my videos and demonetized a lot of them. But I'm planning on them eventually censoring just about everything. You got this channel, patreon.com/Kevin_ship. And there's several tiers on here going all the way up to executive protection, as you can see. For those of you that want an alternative to Patreon, I'm on subscribestar.com/Kevin-ship. You can find the Ship Intelligence Report there. I put out daily, sometimes several times a day, Twitter feeds, Twitter @Kevin_ship, and real-time news and commentary I put out there just to alert everybody. It's the only reason I'm staying with Twitter. I've merged most of my things over to a site called Parler. I recommend everybody do that also because Twitter is censoring as well. And I've got 100+ followers, so I continue to use Twitter just to reach them, but I'm merging a lot of things over to Parler. And then if you're still on Facebook, you can find me at From the Company of Shadows. I'm still posting things there also and you can catch me there. I put out alerts. As Dennis knows, I'm not out to be popular. I'm just out to inform people with the truth and with evidence, and I can sleep at night with that. So once again, Dennis, thank you for joining me. Thanks everybody for joining us on the Ship Intelligence Report, and we will see you next time.
Sure thing.